每个理想都有实现的可能。4年来，小银科技以智慧金融助力1800万人逐梦前行。小银科技给理想前行的力量。
本节目由小银科技冠名播出。坚固、实用、愉悦是建筑界的6字真言。一枚刻有这6字真言的普利兹克奖章是全世界建筑师梦寐以求的荣耀。普利兹克奖被誉为是建筑界的诺贝尔奖，由美国的普利兹克家族通过旗下的凯悦基金会在1979年创立。起家于芝加哥的普利兹克家族是美国最显赫的豪门之一。家族的投资遍布全球的多个国家和地区。普利兹克奖现在的主理人是奖项的创始人普利兹克夫妇的儿子，也就是凯悦酒店集团的行政主席汤姆士·普利兹克。10月17号，在清华大学，因为在商业、文化、建筑，还有国际事务，还有公益领域的杰出贡献，汤姆士·普利兹克被授予了清华大学的名誉博士学位。他在演讲中也提到了创立普利兹克奖的幕后故事。
There was a man named Carlton Smith, a somewhat overweight, pleasant, and bright man who had no job. He needed a job, so he decided that if he could convince someone into creating a prize, then they would give him the job of being the director of that prize. It's quite simple in his mind. Not knowing anyone in our family, he found our phone number, he picked up the phone, and he called the office and said, I would like to speak to Jay Pritzker, my father. He got through. Dad listened to what he had to say. He talked himself into the office. He talked us into doing the Pritzker Prize, and thereby he got himself a job. That was really the beginning of a great journey for us. We had opened the Hyatt Regency Atlanta about 10 years earlier, and we had seen the impact that architecture could have on a person's soul, on their spirit, on their experience. The talks continued with Carlton, and we began to design a framework for a prize. That basically was how the prize was born.
在被授予荣誉学位的第2天，普利兹克就接受了我们财新时间的专访。这也是这位低调的企业家接受的为数不多的视频采访。他早年呢曾经在芝加哥大学学习法律，随后进入凯悦集团管理家族生意。除了是亿万富翁、慈善家，很多人不知道的是，他还是一位历史学家。在演讲中，他也讲到，这些都是出于兴趣，他把成就都归因于意外和幸运。但是，这样的意外和幸运究竟应该如何解释呢？我想知道更多的背后故事。这位身兼数职的生意人究竟是怎么与建筑和考古产生联系的呢？作为普利策奖的幕后金主，他本人又是如何看待建筑学的？作为一名中国通，他又是怎么看待中国建筑在这些年的变化？
Let's firstly start from the honorary degree you received yesterday. We know yesterday you just received an honorary degree by Tsinghua University, and you are the second foreign entrepreneurs to be awarded this degree right after the Bill Gates. So how do you feel about this degree? And in your perspective, you think why are you awarded this degree by Tsinghua University?
Yeah. What I can say is, from my side, it's a great honor. I see Tsinghua as one of the great institutions, not just of China, but in fact of the whole world. And so to be honored by such an important institution is important to me. It's important to me not only because it speaks to my past, but actually it gives me opportunities for the future. It opens up a window to work with people at Tsinghua who are interesting people, very accomplished people, and make new friends in a different area than my day job.
Okay, so we see your speech at Tsinghua University, which is pretty interesting. I noticed that you share many of your insights and experience about architectural thinking, and you think actually some problem we had in life can be solved through the architecture training. Could you please further elaborate this point to our audience?
Yeah, so I think the world is moving into an era of not knowing what the future looks like. Because technology is moving so fast, we can no longer predict what the world will look like in 10 years from now. So then I think about, in a world like that, how do you train yourself to navigate that world and to make positive contributions in that world? And I actually think design training is perfect training, because what it really is, these students are being trained to solve problems. Don't think of it as being trained to build a building. Think of it as being trained to solve a problem. And this client has a certain set of problems, and they go back and they talk to the client, they research, they come up with several solutions to it, they test those solutions, they go back to the client says, I like this, I don't like that. So it's a process for problem solving. So what I was saying yesterday was, architectural training, broaden your horizon. Think of it as training not to build a building, think of it as training to solve a problem, and then you're going to find other opportunities to contribute back to the community or the business you work in, and you may end up not designing buildings, but coming into other commercial areas where you can solve problems. View yourself as a problem solver. So that was sort of the message of yesterday.
Do you have witnessed any architecture training with the early age children educations?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We've talked about it. I haven't actually experienced it myself. But if we think of what I just described, and early on orienting children to what you need to develop is a skill of problem solving. I'm a lawyer. I'm a business guy. I grew up thinking, how am I going to be a good business guy? What's my legal training? In my era, I could project out 10 years and know what the world was going to look like. For children today, they can't. And so what they need to do is be more agile, more comfortable in a world where you don't know the answer. And in that world, it seems to me, thinking of yourself as a problem solver is really a better mindset than thinking of yourself in a narrow way of, this is my skill and I'm only going to do what my skill allows me to do.
Okay. Just as you mentioned, you had a law backgrounds, and which had your earlier careers is not so relevant with the architectures. When you start to feel you have passion and interest about this field?
So in 1968, we opened the Hyatt Regency Atlanta. And it was the first hotel that had open atrium and the elevators, the glass elevators going up and down. And what you saw in the first day is it changed everybody's mood. Employees, guests, visitors, everybody walked around smiling, talking with each other. It changed the total experience of those people who were using that architecture. That was shocking. When we then had the opportunity to start the prize, which frankly came quite accidentally, we picked architecture because we learned it could affect more than just, is it efficient? It could affect the whole mood And so, yes, it has nothing to do with law, but it has everything to do with society. And how do you make a happier society?
We know there is a Chinese architect, Mr. Wang Shu, has been awarded by this, we call it the Nobel Prize in the architecture field. What's your witness for the architectures in China, their styles and their visions for the architect? Does it change during the past several years?
I feel that we were successful in our mission of heightening the awareness of the importance of architecture to society. Particularly, I think the 2012 ceremony maybe was the most successful ceremony we've ever done in this sense. I think it brought architecture onto the radar of policymakers, of government officials, of developers, of a lot of people who in the past in China only thought about efficiency. Build a building, how little can I pay to build the building, and that's my job. And I think what's happened since 2012 is there's more conversation about the importance of architecture, is one. And two, there's more conversation about how do we in China develop great Chinese architects. And the interesting thing is, I think it's being applied not just in the coastal cities of Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, but actually now beginning to go into not only the West, but also some of the more rural areas. I think planners are thinking about, I need to do something for the life of these people, not just to keep them housed or in an office, but have them have a more successful life. How can we help our people have a more successful life?
1976年，汤姆士·普利兹克是第一次来到中国。他说，行走在那个时候的中国街头是他一生中最难忘的回忆之一。后来呢，他几乎每年都会来中国，有的时候还会1年之内来好几次。除了北京、上海、广州这样的大城市，他还去过很多小城市和农村。在过去的30年的时间里，他长期在喜马拉雅山脉西部主持考古和探险活动，还多次资助西藏西部地区的佛教文化遗产保护项目。经年累月的研究让他成为了11世纪藏传佛教文明史研究领域的专家，还被四川大学历史系聘为了客座教授。在汤姆士·普利兹克首次中国之旅之后的10年，也就是1986年，凯越第一次进入了中国市场。在过去的42年的时间里，在他的眼中，中国发生了什么样的变化，又怎样影响着凯越在中国的发展？爱做生意，也爱研究中国文化，这看起来并不太相关的2大爱好，究竟是如何碰撞出火花的呢？
Actually, besides architectures, I talked with your colleague outside. They told me that you are also the scholar, the professor about the Dunhuang and Tibet heritage and cultures. Actually, we find rare information about this part online. So that's pretty interesting for me. I heard you visit Tibet and Dunhuang Academy several times. When you start to have this passion, and I know from the curiosity to actually make it happen, it's a long process. What did you experience actually?
So my first memory of having an interest was I had a map of the world on my wall when I was a little boy, 8 years old. When I was 12, a friend was staying overnight, and late at night, I went up to the map and I said, here's where I'm going to go one day. And it was really through the mountain regions in the southern part of China and Nepal and like that. And so it was in my mind from then. Then later, after I got married, my wife and I walked across the Himalayas for 500 miles. We walked over the Himalayas and then along them. And that began to give us an interest in the culture and an understanding of that. And then we began to read and learn about history and this sort of thing. And then it sort of moved from adventure to scholarship. We began to work first with Sichuan University and then with State Administration of Cultural Heritage. This is 20, 25 years ago. And we collaborated with them, and our interest is around, this is very academic, an 11th century kingdom that was in West Tibet, that was very influential in bringing Buddhism from India into Tibet. And we found an inscription in a temple that talked about the king and talked about his priest, his chief lama. We then got the biography of the chief lama. We circled the village, every village name that was in the biography, and we spent 20 years exploring and finding all of those villages. And in those villages, we found ancient remains. We found libraries, we found statues, we found inscriptions. And then our job was to preserve them, to make sure that they stayed for future generations. So we would work with Sachs on preservation, and then also to use that information to learn in a scholarly way. And so I've written some articles and done some speaking in this area, and it's opened up a whole new, really interesting world for me. That was basically a north-south project. Started in India and came north into Tibet. More recently, we've started an east-west research along the Silk Road. What influence did Iran have? What influence did China have? What influence did these different cultures have on each other? And so over the last week, we've been traveling along the Silk Road. We went to Tajikistan and Xinjiang and Qinghai and Dunhuang, and learning about, mostly we do it through the prism of art, but that is just the prism we look through. It opens up all of history. And so that's how we've been studying the Silk Road.
Okay, I can feel your passion, exciting when you talk about this topic. Yeah. You know, you have different jobs, the businessmen, the scholars. I'm not sure, like you, from such a prestigious families, and family certainly have some impact on your passion and earlier careers. What was that? Is that pressure, or is that the family culture?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. So I know I always wanted to be in business. That was always attractive to me. And my training was as a lawyer, and then I practiced law for a little while, and then I soon moved into Hyatt. And what's been wonderful is, so I came to China first in 1976, okay? And so I've learned a lot about China, and that's from, we'll call it the scholarly point of view. But then Hyatt came into China early. We were in 84, we negotiated our first deal, and we opened our first hotel in 86. And China has become increasingly important for Hyatt. And so what's happened is those two different interests have come together. And so we describe at Hyatt, our purpose is to care for people so they can be their best, okay? So if we think about that purpose, in China, how we care for our employees or how we care for our guests is different than how we might do it in America or in Japan or in Europe. So we actually think of ourselves not as a global company, but as a local company. If we're going to be successful, we need to be local. We need to be part of the community. And on Hyatt's board, I'm the voice that can talk authentically about China because I've spent so much time here. So it's an accident that I have these two passions and that they actually work beautifully together. And so we talk about how do we become a local company in China, and how do we execute against that in a way that is correct for millennials in China are different than millennials in Chicago, and millennials in China are different than people of older generations in China. And how are we going to begin to care for those people in the way they want to be cared for? And so it's sort of been wonderful to be able to contribute to Hyatt in terms of our expansion in China in a way that is local rather than trying to be an American company coming into China. We want to be more of a China company in China.
You mentioned you first lived with China is 42 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's such a long time. And I also mentioned you visited many different locations. Usually the CEO come to China maybe to the Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, big cities, but you also visit some cities I have never been there, such as Qinghai. So I believe you have a different feeling compared with them, only went to the business center in China. So what's your witness for the change happens during the past 42 years? For example, the hotel service industry or another different change?
So I've been very fortunate. I've been able to go to certain rural areas of China again and again and again over a 20, 30-year period. So it's not just the change in Beijing, Shanghai. The more important to me is in the rural areas and watching the change, watching them get electricity, food, medicine, nutrition that they haven't had for 2,000 years. And then watch the progress in the last 2 decades is fantastic. What I'd say for us, for Hyatt, in terms of ability to deliver the experience that we want to deliver. If I go back to the early days of the late 80s and 90s, it was very difficult to deliver a world-class experience. The service levels weren't there, the physical elements weren't there, the technology wasn't there. Today, we're able to deliver an experience that is as good as any experience we can deliver anywhere in the world. And we're able to deliver that not just in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, but we're able to deliver that in Xining and in Chengdu. So we can now deliver those. Don't think of them as service levels. Think of them as experiences. When you go to a hotel, when you leave, what you remember is the overall experience. And that's what we have to do, and what we are now able to do in China is deliver the experience that you want. 20 years ago, that was very difficult to do. So if you actually look at Hyatt's development in China, while we were here earlier than most, we actually, if we think Greater China, we were in Hong Kong in 1969. Okay, so we've probably been here longer than most of the major hotel companies, but we really didn't start developing quickly until maybe the 2000s, because our view was we want Hyatt DNA in a hotel the day it opens. And Hyatt DNA in the hotel the day it opens means some people who have worked in Hyatt before and understand what the Hyatt family is like, some people who've the ability to deliver a Hyatt experience on day one. So our growth, our entry was early. but our growth was a little bit later.
So if we were to summarize, what's the main core of the Haya DNA you mentioned several times?
Care.
Care.
So the core of our DNA is care. And it's care not just for you as a guest, but for all of our colleagues, our employees, everyone we touch. And so we think about if we were them, if we were that employee and we wanted a full career at Hyatt, what would our needs be? How can I tend to my family and still have a career? And so we try and put ourselves in your shoes and care for you in a way that you need to be cared for. And I think that comes because we're a family business, right? If you think about all the things I said, that's similar to how you think about your family. We come from a family background, and we're a family business, and we talk about being a big Hyatt family, and how do you take care of your family? I think that's what the DNA of Hyatt is about.
Okay, the last question is maybe quite normal, but people are always interested. What's your future plans? You got to balance different jobs, and do you have any new funding?
Yes, I have lots of new things that I'm working on. So on this trip, we've planted a lot of seeds. We planted seeds in Tsinghua last night at dinner, sitting next to the dean, coming up with ideas. We planted seeds when we were in Dunhuang, ideas. Yesterday, we signed a strategic partnership at the Palace Museum, and we went to lunch, and I said to the director, okay, we've done that, now what are we going to do next? And he sort of looked at me, he said, but we only signed it 15 minutes ago. I said, yes, now we have to come up with the next idea and the next idea. So we have lots of ideas. I don't know which ones of them will actually come up. So I don't want to make promises or say we're going to do ABC until I really am comfortable that they will come up. But our strategic partnership at Palace Museum is only 1 day old. So that was our most recent idea that actually came to fruition, and now we'll build on that. We'll do all sorts of things between our guests, giving them opportunity, and working with the Palace Museum to bring more people in to see the magic that they are able to present. So we have lots of plans.